Oh, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFS Hockey Report. I'm your host, Brock Seguin. With me, as always, we got Zach Laing. I guess I shouldn't say always because he's not here on Mondays anymore, or when Jacob Markstrom plays. So, Zach, welcome back. How you doing today, bud?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. Yeah. Fortunately, the schedule doesn't allow me to do Monday shows anymore, but I heard you held down the fort well and talk some trash about Jacob Markstrom on my behalf. So thank you for that. And yeah, ready to jump into another one tonight. I'm pretty excited about this slate. This one seems pretty fun.
Yeah, missing Mondays isn't usually the end of the world because it's like 2, 3, 4 game slates typically. Yesterday, 10 games, and then 6 game main slate ended up being a little bit busier, but that's okay. Hopefully, next Monday will be a little lighter. Vegas no show destroyed every bet and lineup. My God, yeah. 1 for 7 on the power play after having the number one power play advantage yesterday was not what we expected to happen. Really unfortunate. Yeah, they cost me some dough last night for sure. But let's get to tonight. The Columbus Blue Jackets will be hosting the Ottawa Senators. It's going to be Elvis Merzlikins as he kind of redefines himself following the coaching change. It's going to be James Reimer for the second game in a row for the Ottawa Senators. Jakub Dobich gets the start for the Montreal Canadiens. We're projecting to see Jesper Wallstedt in the second half of a back-to-back for the Minnesota Wild. Unclear who starts in Tampa, although we were projecting to see Vasilevsky versus Yaroslav Askarov. Askarov is almost certainly going to go after Nedeljkovic went last night. Also got in a fight, which was awesome. You love to see that. Very rare. Jake Oettinger goes to the Dallas Stars. Just a note on Dallas. They have a ton of game time decisions. We don't know who. They didn't tell us. They have an illness going around, so a bunch of game time decisions for Dallas tonight. The Boston Bruins will go with Jeremy Swayman. The Nashville Predators will start UC Saros. Alex Lyon projected to get the nod for the Sabres. Eric Comrie likely to get the start for the Winnipeg Jets in the second half of back-to-back for them. It's going to be Joel Hofer for the St. Louis Blues, who will be without Dylan Holloway as they continue to work with his injury. He just returned from a high ankle sprain, so giving him some time off, not playing him too many games in a row. Darcy Kemper projected to get the start for the LA Kings. However, I did see one source suggest that it's going to be Anton Forsberg, slightly more reliable source suggesting that it's going to be Darcy Kemper. So we shall see. They will host Jonathan Quick, who makes his a return to Los Angeles here in the second half of a back-to-back for the New York Rangers. A special night for Jonathan Quick, possibly, most likely his last start ever in LA. And then Tristan Chari goes for the Edmonton Oilers. It's going to be not Jacob Markstrom. It's going to be Jake Allen for the New Jersey Devils. Still no Leon Draisaitl for the Oilers. Let's get through to our first game here. Click the thumbs up on the video, subscribe, join the Discord, and fill out the DFO DK contest. Thank you, Nick. Okay, I'm going to handle the breakdown today. Zach's going to give us his thoughts on who we should play. Let's get to it. The Columbus Blue Jackets host the Ottawa Senators. Both teams grading out very well in 5v5 offense. Defensively, still pretty solid. The Senators certainly better than the Blue Jackets defensively, at least in terms of defending. Maybe not so much stopping the puck because they still give up a lot of goals due to a lack of goaltending quality. The big advantage in this game seems to be the Ottawa Senators power play up against the Blue Jackets penalty kill that has struggled. This is the number 2 power play advantage on the night, also projected for a healthy amount of power plays at 3.1. So, Zach, this is kind of an interesting game in, the betting line favors the Ottawa Senators, but DFS, it kind of feels a little bit better to play the Blue Jackets. And honestly, like, this feels like a different Blue Jackets team since the coaching change. I mean, we've seen some comments in the media saying, like, what's happened with you, Elvis Merzlikins, or you, Kent Johnson? It's just like, yeah, the coaching change has really made a difference. And what are your thoughts here on the Blue Jackets before we get to the full breakdown and since the coaching change?
Yeah, I've definitely got interest in them here. I mean, I think this is one of those situations where you're seeing a little bit of a coaching bump, right? I mean, this is stuff that happens all the time. Listen, I've followed the Edmonton Oilers my entire life. I know what a lot of coaching changes look like. It can inspire some confidence in certain players. And I think there's guys here on this team, and you mentioned a few of them, that have really kind of stepped up their game here. So, James Reimer getting the start here for Ottawa tonight, let in 4 goals on 34 shots against your Red Wings, on Sunday there. So, I think this is a very viable spot here for the Blue Jackets.
Let's get to the matchups for this one. They look pretty bad for the Blue Jackets, but this is also a very high event game. They look much better on the Ottawa Senators side of things. As we said, the Senators do grade out pretty well defensively, especially with these new line combinations. But the goaltending has still been a little suspect. I will say that Reimer looked okay in that game. So I think there's a reason to have a bit of interest in this entire game. And the field seems to be feeling the same way, right? About 5% on like every single line in this game, which is pretty wild. Uh, when you take a look at Columbus too, the offensive metrics continue to jump off the page at you. Columbus won in a very good spot as well in terms of their underlying metrics. So we'll start with the Blue Jackets. Obviously, the second line with Jenner, Monahan, and Kent Johnson. We've seen them get a lot more usage. Since the coaching change, the top line just always been pretty solid. I think you can feel pretty confident in leaving Cole Sillinger off, but Fantilli Marchenko always a good bet to have a big night, especially against a team that can't really seem to keep the puck out of their net. So yeah, I'm pretty interested in both the top two lines. Obviously, we've seen Charlie Coyle had a couple massive games in terms of shot volume, and then followed it up with a zero shot performance. So take it or leave it there. But I think that you can't really go wrong with Columbus 2 or 1 or 2. I think the matchup favors Columbus 2. They have the slightly better underlying metrics, so maybe that gives them a slight edge. And I think obviously the other thing to consider is they're pretty easy to build around considering they're just 12,200, where Columbus 1 is a lot more expensive. For the Senators, we saw this second line have a massive game last week. Kachuk, Cousins, and Ridley Gregg. And like, oh, the second line might be something here. And matchup wise, it is far better for them tonight. They are going to see a lot of that Adam Fantilli line, which has really struggled defensively. So I think Ottawa 2 probably slightly ahead of Ottawa 1 for me, but I think Ottawa 1's a fine play as well. The underlying metrics very strong for them as well. The matchup for them not bad, not as good as Ottawa 2, but pretty good as they see a lot of this second line. Jenner, Monahan, and company, and their underlying metrics not nearly as bad as Columbus 1, but also not great. So I think both teams' top sixes are super, super viable in this game. It looks like a really good game environment. I mean, the implied total is extremely high. This looks like a fantastic game environment. I think for me, I lean the two second lines over the two top lines. Where do you come in on this game, Zach?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I mean, Columbus too has been really solid here since these guys have kind of gotten together. Boone Jenner, obviously, since returning from injury, has been a great addition back into this lineup. He's been providing a really solid floor thanks to 8.3 shots on goal per hour of ice time. Want to see some more out of Sean Monahan here. I think he's somebody who's kind of, maybe not fallen off a little bit, as a whole, but his game kind of hasn't been where it was earlier on this season. So I'd like to see some more offense from him. But Ken Johnson's been stepping it up as of late. Some good shot volume from him too. Don't get me wrong. I like this spot here for Columbus 1 as well. Obviously, Fantilli and Marchenko on that top power play unit. They're the real drivers up there on that top line. And I think on the Senators side of things, I agree with you too on Ottawa too. I mean, these three guys have been really driving the bus here for this Senators side of things. So I'll probably sprinkle in a little bit on Ottawa 1, probably not as much on Ottawa 1 as I will have on Columbus 1, but Columbus 2 is probably going to be my highest owned line out of this game here. Really nice that you get some power play correlation there with Ken Johnson obviously up on that top unit and Boone Jenner and Monahan on that second unit. And the Blue Jackets really split up their power play time pretty evenly at 57% for that top unit, leaving 43% of the ice time for the second unit. So I think they're certainly viable here. I like this spot quite a bit for the Blue Jackets tonight.
Worth mentioning, Dante Fabro out. So Damon Severson will move up and play with Zach Werenski this evening. With Goodbranson, Zamula, and Christensen as the other three defensemen, I think you're going to see an enormous amount of minutes for Werenski, Severson, and Provorov tonight. I think all three of them are very strong plays. Severson obviously gets a nice bump moving up to play with Werenski. I think he's going to be a popular play tonight. In terms of the kind of like the 5v5 correlation since the coaching change, the Fantilli line spends a lot of time with the Provorov unit. At least in their last game, the Monahan line spent a lot more time with the Werenski unit in their last game. As for the Ottawa Senators, I mentioned, we'll go just take a quick look at their power plays. Kachuk and Cousins together on the top unit. It's just Batherson. So, whether it's the top line or the second line, both got correlation in terms of mini stacks on that top power play unit with Jake Sanderson, as we mentioned, number 2 power play advantage on the night. So very interesting game. Montreal now will host Minnesota tonight. The Wild coming in the second half of back-to-back after a big performance over the Maple Leafs last night. They are plus 115 road underdogs tonight. These two teams look pretty similar at 5v5. And then on the special teams, it's kind of the opposite. The good power play goes against the good PK. The bad power play goes against the bad penalty kill. But as I mentioned yesterday, Minnesota won graded out extremely well, and they do again tonight. And the reason for that continues to be that they are expected to play just gargantuan minutes tonight. Kirill Kaprizov grading out projecting for 23 minutes tonight. I don't know where. I guess I'll just have to sort by Minnesota to really find everybody that we're looking for. Zuccarello, 22 minutes. Ryan Hartman, 20 minutes. So this line is projected for a ton of minutes tonight. In fact, it is 34% of the 5v5 ice time for the Minnesota Wild. So, even if, the underlying metrics are really good and the matchup is really good tonight, where last night it was more of a just minutes thing, the matchup didn't look quite as good, and then they just dominated the matchup. So hopefully no Marcus Foligno hat tricks tonight if you play Minnesota 1. Hopefully it's a little bit more Minnesota 1 if that's the route you decide to go. But yeah, I think that this line makes a ton of sense. Obviously, Vladimir Tarasenko, I think, is a solid value option just because of that top power play unit exposure. The problem is you need it to come on on the power play because the 5v5 metrics for that second line are really quite terrible. And then the power play is just not in an amazing spot. It's not a terrible spot. Like I said, the Canadiens PK is pretty solid, but they do take a lot of penalties. So the Wild power play should have plenty of chances tonight. So I do think, with the sixth best power play advantage, some of the better matchups at 5v5, really, really good underlying metrics, massive ice time. I think Minnesota 1 is a great play again tonight. They were very chalky last night. They're not nearly as chalky tonight. So I don't really care too much about the Minnesota depth because they just don't see the ice, where I've got a lot more interest here in this top line than the rest of this unit, which is obviously not a hot take by any stretch, but I think this top line is a line that I'm certainly going to get over the field on tonight, and I think they are a great play. For the Montreal Canadiens, Suzuki will get Kirby Dach on the top line tonight. Alexander Texier is out. Kirby Dach makes his return to the lineup. They have spent a decent amount of ice time together. It's just not been very good offensively. It's been okay. I think Dach at minimum price, though, helps keep the price tag down for them. And I think that, especially Caulfield, even at 6,000 and Suzuki at 6,300, they're really cheap for how good they are. The matchup is far from ideal, but I don't mind Montreal one night with Minnesota coming in on a back-to-back. It's not my favorite play ever, but I just feel like they're way too cheap for how good they are. So I'll probably get some Montreal in the mix, about 5%. So might come in slightly under the field here, but just really, really nice price tags for them. And then I think the opposite is true on Montreal too. Like I said, they're trending in the right direction, but now they're probably getting to the point where you have to make the decision a little bit more. Like they're almost as expensive as the top line tonight. Their matchup is significantly better though. So I do think that Demidov and company can stay hot, but I do still think they're outperforming their expectation a little bit. So I don't have a ton of interest in Montreal. Are you different than me? I feel like we're always a little bit different in our views on the Canadiens tonight.
Yeah, I'm willing to get there a little bit on Montreal tonight. I think Kirby Dach's a really interesting play at 2,500 there. Obviously been out for the last 2 months with a broken foot, but in his 15 games to start the season, he had 5 goals and 7 assists or 7 points on the year. So he had some production, had some success to start the year. Obviously, got sidelined here with this injury. I'm fine with getting to him a little bit tonight. Not drawing a whole lot of ownership can let you get to some of these more expensive lines on the slate tonight. So I'll be sprinkling in some ownership on Montreal 1 and 2. Nothing crazy. Maybe 5-10% as a whole on Montreal 1 and probably just 5% on that second line. I don't mind betting on them while they're still hot here and hoping they can keep it up. Again, you mentioned the solid matchup that they have here tonight, 46% of their ice time going up against that second line for the Minnesota Wild. So it feels like a decent spot here. And, speaking of matchups, that third line has a really good matchup tonight. Brendan Gallagher, Phil Deneau mini stack could be viable tonight. That's certainly some cheaper options there if you're looking to kind of go for that sort of build tonight. In terms of the Wild, yeah, definitely like them here. Definitely going to be over the field on this top line. Little surprised at how little ownership, I guess, that's coming in on them, 6.8%. Jakub Dobeš had a great start to the season, but he's kind of really fallen off here as of late. On the season, 57% quality start percentage, which is a fairly decent number, but just an 888 save percentage, 6.4 goals saved above expected on the year. He's got one game against the Wild in his career, 320 goals against average, and an 885 save percentage. So got a lot of interest in Minnesota 1 here tonight. Probably won't be getting to that second line at all here. Maybe a little bit of Tarasenko for some power play correlation, but that'll probably be it.
Yeah, and you bring up Montreal 3. And you said Gallagher and to know Josh Anderson's actually been pretty solid as well. He's got 3 goals in his last 4 games, and Darren points that out here too in the chat at $2,500. So I do think that he's a little bit viable tonight. You know, obviously he's shooting like 60% during that stretch to get there, but nice to see him get back in the lineup and get a little bit of production going as of late. So I do think that third line matchup, I do think a guy like Gallagher and you know Anderson, super basically minimum price, could be viable tonight. Could certainly get on the score sheet with a decent matchup here at 5v5. I don't remember if I said how good Montreal's power play matchup is. It's 10th best, though. Let's get to Tampa Bay and San Jose. The Lightning are the biggest favorites on the slate. 5th best 5v5 expected goals for in the weighted team ratings, going up against the worst 5v5 defense in the league. They also have a pretty solid power play going up against a pretty bad penalty kill. Yeah, it's going to be kind of an all-you-can-eat buffet for me with Tampa 1 tonight. I love when they get Cirelli, Kucherov, and Hagel together. They've been super good. We've talked about them before. And yes, they're 21,100. It is going to be expensive and tough, you know, a little tougher to build around. But they have the number 1 matchup score on the night. And not only do they have the number 1 matchup score, they also have nearly the best across the board 5v5 metrics. They have been outstanding whatever put together. So these underlying metrics with the number 1 matchup on the slate, I really don't see how it could go wrong for Tampa 1. And not to mention, I mean, Nikita Kucherov is scorching hot right now, right? So I think with the injuries and, you know, you got no Braden Point in the lineup, like it's basically just loading up this top line. I don't really think, like, even when you look at the metrics, I don't really think there's a reason to get to the depth here of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And you can kind of see that in the ownership. Everyone's like, yep, let's just click on Tampa 1 and move on. But they just grade out so tremendously well in the charts. It's not really, you know, crazy to say that they are a smash play tonight. But, like, Kucherov has got 56 points in his last 29 games. He's scoring at a 158-point pace, a nearly 50-goal pace over his last 29 games. He has been bananas good. Brandon Hagel, same thing. Both have been outstanding. You know, it depends. Obviously, if Vasilevsky gets the start for the Sharks tonight, I don't really have a lot of interest in the if Vasilevsky gets the start for the Lightning, I don't have a lot of interest in the Sharks. Matchups are really bad. Underlying metrics still pretty solid for that top line, but I just don't think it's a great matchup on the second half of back-to-back, especially after a big win yesterday for the Sharks. Do you feel different about Celebrini and company tonight?
Not really. You know, I'm kind of at this point where I'm just going to play Macklin Celebrini on every single slate that he's on. He's been that good this season, so I'm fine with playing him and Will Smith. A little mini stack of them at 5%, but that's probably going to be it for me. And, you know, you talk about the Lightning being in a great spot here. I think it's worth mentioning in this too that Askarov getting the start tonight, his game has really kind of fallen off. Like really, really big time. In October and November, he had a 9-6-1 record and a 908 save percentage in 16 games played. In his last 14 games, going back to the start of December, 7-6 record and an 866 save percentage. And even just in the month of January, he's got a 485 goals against average and an 835 save percentage. So this seems like an absolute smash spot for the Lightning. I mean, I'm going to be well over the field on them at 15%. Like I'm willing to go full Edmonton 1 mode here on tap tonight. This looks like a really, really good spot for them. So pretty easy for me to just load up on these guys here. You know, I don't really have a whole lot of interest in the rest of this lineup. I think getting to some Gensel is probably a smart thing on this slate here tonight. You know, he's projecting for around 13% ownership, obviously up there on that top power play unit as well. You know, this second line doesn't have the best metrics at 5-on-5 or anything like that. But Gensel is still a guy who can kind of score at will here. And the Lightning do have the 3rd best power play matchup on the slate as a whole. So certainly somebody that I'm not going to leave at the wayside tonight, as I have done in the past and been bit by many times.
Yeah, we've got 4th best power play advantage for the Sharks as well. So if you want a reason to play the Sharks, I think that's probably it. Since Christmas, Kucherov leads the NHL with 25 points. Celebrini is tied for 12th with 17 points, but Celebrini during that stretch is also 3rd in the NHL in shots on goal. So continues to generate an enormous amount of chances. and just be an absolute stud. But yeah, I just don't know. Like, obviously, if Jonas Johansson gets a surprise start tonight, I think obviously then celebrating becomes much more viable. But I think if it's Vasilevsky, it's pretty easy to just move on and wait for a better matchup here. Just a 2.4 implied total, very difficult to get there. And with a 2.4 implied total, I really don't expect Johansson tonight. So the Dallas Stars will host the Boston Bruins. As I mentioned, the Dallas Stars, a lot of game time decisions. The problem is we don't know who they are. They didn't tell us, so that sucks. To be honest with you, pretty low event looking hockey game. Dallas won now. They've been Dallas 2 now. I've got them listed as Dallas 1 for whatever reason. They continue to be their best 5v5 line. They draw a pretty difficult matchup tonight, though. Going to see a lot of the first and third line for the Bruins. First and third line for the Bruins. First line's been insane good defensively, generating absolutely nothing offensively, but still scoring 5.3 goals, 4 per 60. That's sustainable for sure. So yeah, the matchup here is certainly not great. I don't think I'm going to get to this game a ton. I will say if I was going to play this game, it's probably going to be Dallas 1. We've started to see Robertson's price tag come down. He was about 9K. Now he's down to 83K. Hints at $5,300 feels like a great value. So that would probably be the line that I would get to here. Wyatt Johnson and Mikko Rantanen, their price tags have come down too. So like you can make an argument about both of them. The power play has cooled down a little bit. Still 7th best power play advantage of the night. The Bruins are terribly undisciplined. So I think like if you're going to get to the Stars tonight, it's going to be, or if the Stars are going to find offense tonight, is probably going to be through the power play, which it's been for the majority of the season. This is a very undisciplined Bruins team, but I just don't expect there to be a ton of fireworks in this hockey game, and I just don't think that it's necessarily the best game environment of the night. So I will say that Dallas's power play, with the price tags coming down, with the ownership being very modest, I think is an interesting pivot spot in deep tournaments tonight. But the illness and some of the question marks makes me a little bit hesitant. I do have a hard time playing the Bruins with these current line combinations. It is seemingly working for them, at least defensively. But offensively, I guess it is working because they're scoring, but they're just not generating enough. I don't think it's really sustainable. The Stars, for the most part, have been pretty good defensively. So, yeah, to me, not the best game environment here tonight. Probably not a game I'm going to get to a whole heck of a lot outside of some power play exposure for the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, I don't even know if I'm going to get to the Stars at all tonight. With it being a flu game for them, the lineup concerns that we have, I think for me, I'm kind of comfortable staying away from this one. This is a game that's 30 minutes after the main slate lock. So kind of annoying on that front there. And I also think that Jeremy Swayman at 7K is one of my favorite goalie plays on the slate here. Obviously a guy who's been tremendous this season. 72% quality start percentage. That's only behind Andrei Vasilevsky for all starting goaltenders. He's got 27.5 goals saved above expected here. Dallas has really struggled to score here as of late. 5-on-5 in their last 10 games played, just 1.6 goals for per hour. They've gone 2-6-2 over that stretch. Their power play has kind of dropped off here. This feels like a tough spot, especially when you look at those defensive metrics for this Boston Bruins side of things. So I can't fault anybody for getting to a little bit of Dallas, like just because of how good that power play has been on the season. But it's not even like they have a tremendous matchup here tonight. Pretty much middle of the pack at 7th overall. So I think for me, I'm willing to fade them up front here. And honestly, I don't even know if I'm going to get to Boston tonight. You can talk me into a little bit of Pasternak here for sure. I think Arvidsson at $4,300 remains still a really solid value play. But beyond that, I'm probably staying away from this game.
Yeah, you bring it up about Dallas. This is a team that was nipping at the Colorado Avalanche heels a month ago. Since then, they've been, basically since Christmas, the wheels have completely fallen off here. They've lost 10 of their last 12 hockey games, 4 of which in a shootout or overtime. But they've averaged just 2.5 goals per game during that stretch, and they've given up 3.5 goals against per game during that stretch. And Jake Ottinger hasn't been hitting the sharpest. And yeah, you bring up a good point about Victor Arvidsson. I talked about him last week a lot. Zach at 3,900. I think they represent. There's some people in the chat talking about him too. A pretty decent mini stack. The matchup obviously not great. Underlying metrics, still pretty good. So I don't mind them as a cheap filler here. Arvidsson one-offs or Zach at Arvidsson mini stacks, I think are fine. from the Bruins, and I honestly prefer that over the pasta play just because I don't trust the offensive metrics. It's a very pretty penny to pay for a $9,200 player when you got guys like McDavid and Kucherov on tonight's slate that just project significantly better than pasta. So yeah, not a great game environment for either of us here. Let's get to Nashville and Buffalo. Both teams grading out basically middle of the pack offensively and defensively. Really bad power play up against really bad penalty kill. Decent penalty kill, decent power play there. Kind of a strange game. We talked about the Sabres a lot. A team that just ran scorching hot. We were kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it kind of seems like it has. Whether or not they, continue to or kind of pick it back up, we shall see. But they've lost 2 in a row. They've now lost 3 of their last 5. Still scoring goals during that stretch outside of the game against the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes will do that to you. This matchup with the Predators is always kind of a weird one, right? Like on paper, in the charts, the matchups never look that good. Seemingly the Predators, though, do give up plenty of goals. I mean, when you look at the stats, it's not terrible. It's not great. I just feel like Nashville grades out better than I feel like they actually are. They just gave up 7 to the Vegas Golden Knights. They've given up 3+ goals in 4 of their last 5. They grade out well, but I always just feel like maybe they're a little bit more gettable than we think. So, that being said, I don't have a ton of interest in Buffalo. I think I'll always kind of go back to this Buffalo second line with Zucker and Quinn. I think they're always kind of fine options, but I just don't know if they're tournament winners type thing. We haven't seen them have huge games. I think they can certainly meet value, but I don't think they're tournament winning plays usually. Maybe that changes tonight. For Nashville, I do think it's just still kind of this top line or bust. I don't mind bunting Howell to Stamkos. I'll still get there. Their matchup's a little trickier tonight. I like this Forsberg, Evangelista, and O'Reilly line. They've obviously played well. They got the best matchup. They got the best underlying metrics. So I'll probably just go with Nashville 1 for the most part in this game. I'm not super comfortable with the ownership, though. I don't think it's I think I'll probably come in under the field or just around it. There's better chalky spots tonight than Nashville 1. So for me, just kind of a meh game environment. Not a game that's going to draw a significant amount of my attention. How about you?
Yeah, I got some interest in this game here. I'm okay meeting the field on the Nashville side of things. 10% on that top line, 5% on the second line. As Darren mentions in the chat there, Yossi, he has been on quite a tear, since coming back from injury. Luke Evangelista loves playing the Buffalo Sabres. 4 games played, 4 goals and 6 points. Ryan O'Reilly, another guy, loves going up against the Buffalo Sabres. I wonder why. 6 goals and 22 points in 19 games played. Forsberg just under a point per game. So these guys have had success going up against Buffalo. So I'm comfortable meeting the field there on them. I like this second line still too. Stamkos continuing to be just a rock solid play on most nights here. He's really turned his season around in a big way. This Buffalo side of things, I just never get him right. Anytime I play him, it just never seems to work out. That being said, I'm going to play a little bit of Buffalo too here tonight. Jack Quinn, a goal and 4 points going up against Nashville in his career. They draw the best or have, I don't know, maybe they don't. Never mind. They have a good line stats and a terrible matchup here tonight. So I'm comfortable sprinkling a little bit here. Jack Quinn's been solid as of late. Good shot volume, 8.7 shots on goal per hour of ice time. McLeod still wanting more offensively from him. He doesn't really provide you much of a floor, and neither has Jason Zucker as of late. So, maybe it's a Jack Quinn one-off for me at $3,600. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a little mini stack of Tage and Tuck up on that top line. But it's a pretty rough spot for them. Their offensive metrics together really have not looked good. So I don't think I'm going to get to a whole lot of Buffalo here and just going to meet the field in Nashville.
Yeah, like I said, Buffalo scores and they win hockey games, but the scoring's been pretty spread out. I mean, since Christmas, Tage Thompson clearly leads the way. He's their best player by a mile. We don't need to say that. But, I mean, McLeod's offense has been great, but he's shooting nearly 30%. Tuck's been great. He's shooting 27%. Doan's been great. He's shooting 29%. The shoot is going to fall here or drop, as they say, and it's starting to happen, I think, recently. And I think that the offense, might just be a little bit too spread out to really, they kind of feel like the old LA Kings where they score, but they just don't, we never know where the offense is probably coming from. So I agree that I don't know if there's many tournament winning plays from the Sabres tonight. Winnipeg hosts the Blues. Boy, fun hockey game, huh? This is going to be awful. There's like nothing going to happen in this hockey game. Probably both power plays stink. Both penalty kills are good. So I don't think there's going to be any power play production. Offensively at 5v5, I feel like the Jets are starting to come around. Obviously wasn't the case yesterday. I don't mind this top line. I don't know. Joel Hofer starting, so probably not. Matchups are good on both sides. Like both these teams don't grade out very well defensively. Joel Hofer, Eric Comrie. Yes, Eric Comrie should be gettable. Which line do you play from the Blues? Honestly, who do you play from St. Louis? Nobody. Philip Broberg, like that's it. Snuggerud, maybe $4,100. Those are the only two players that I'm really willing to click on from the Blues right now. There's just not enough offense. So I don't mind Snuggerud. I don't mind Broberg still on that top power play unit, or at least expected to be. Since Christmas, their leading point getter has 6 points. You know who it is? Robert Thomas. He's missed like half the games. Pavel Buchnevich is the healthiest player in the lineup that leads the team in points with 6 in 11 games. There's just no offense here. It's hard to just sit here, even with Comrie getting the start, and feel confident in clicking on him. I bet the under in this game. I think it's probably going to hit comfortably. The Jets, I just don't. When you play them, they shit the bed. When you don't, they nuke. I can't seem to get them right this year. It's a line that we used to play with a lot of success, and it just hasn't been the case for me this year. I will say the second line's offensive metrics are starting to come around. Their matchup's very good as well. They're going to see a lot of the second line for the Blues, which below average defensively, but these metrics are starting to turn around. They're still not great. I don't think I'll play much Winnipeg 2. Winnipeg 1 at 18,200. I think they're okay. I just think there's so many higher priorities on my list tonight. So for me, just really not getting to this hockey game much at all, if at all. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with you, man. Like this game's gross. Gonna play a little bit of Winnipeg 1 here. It pretty much feels like the only spot that you can even make an argument for being a really viable play here on this slate tonight. So keeping it pretty simple on that front. I like Hofer between the pipes. I think he's a fine play. You can probably talk me into a little bit of Comrie as well. There's going to be volume concerns there for sure. But this game does feel like a lower scoring kind of coin flip for me. So I don't really have any interest at all. Actually, I don't have any interest in playing the St. Louis Blues. They are a terrible, terrible hockey club. So yeah, for me, it's pretty much Winnipeg 1 or bust here in this game.
You bring up Joel Hofer, $7,300. I do think he's viable. I do think the Blues can win this game, and if they do, it's going to have to be low scoring. So he makes some sense. He's also from nearby, I believe. He's from close to Winnipeg. Where is he from? Where did it go? He is from Winnipeg, exactly. So nearby Winnipeg, nearby Winnipeg. So yeah, hometown kid. That helps, especially with Eric Comrie getting the start for the Winnipeg Jets. Let's move on. We got the LA Kings versus the New York Rangers. Another pretty bad hockey game here. I don't anticipate there's going to be a lot of goal scoring. I think where we should start is I want to believe that Jonathan Quick will have a good game tonight because it's his return to LA. It could be his last game in LA where he spent 100 years between the pipes. But my God, since Christmas, he has played 6 hockey games. He's been pulled in 3 of them. He is 0-5-1 with a .791 save percentage. He's given up 4.5 goals per game, and he's only averaged 48 minutes in those hockey games. It has been rough. So yeah, I think that the Kings are probably viable unless it's like a legacy game type thing for Quick tonight. The Rangers in very deep tonight. The Kings still grade out very well defensively, so I don't really have a lot of interest in the Rangers tonight. I think that Panarin and company are okay. They're super low owned. Probably not going to get there much. I think that LA3 is probably live yet again, as they have been a lot lately. I think Turcotte's still way too cheap at $2,800. Kuzmenko's still too cheap at $3,400. They continue to play a decent amount of ice time. Their underlying metrics continue to be very, very strong. Their matchup is not good, but they continue to play a lot. I think one other player is pretty interesting in this hockey game, and that's Corey Perry, $3,300. He's averaging like 16 minutes with all these injuries. He's back in. He's expected to be back in the top power play unit. It is a power play unit that grades out horrifically because they are scoring at 16%. Is it under 16? Let's get the decimal point in it. Yeah, 15.9. You'd love to see it. So I don't think it matters a lot, but I think at 3,300, he's a nice value. LaFerriere is even okay at 4,500. So I don't mind LA3. I don't mind LA1. But again, not a whole, not significant interest in this hockey game. I will say there's a advantage headline after drawing the more difficult matchup last night, draws the better matchup tonight. Their underlying metrics without Panarin continue to be horrific. So I don't mind like his advantage had one-off, but that is probably the extent of it. I don't really care about playing JT Miller. So again, this game doesn't draw a lot of my interest. How about you?
Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest in this one either. I think I agree with you on this King side of things. Like for me, LA3 has been a line that I've been playing a lot lately, just like you have. So I've got interest in getting there here again tonight. Turcotte, Kuzmenko, I think they're solid value plays. Bit of exposure on this top line. I mean, Alex LaFerriere has been pretty solid since getting up there. 9.4 shots on goal per hour over his last 20 games. Kempe, his shot volume is a little lower than we're used to seeing, just 7.4 shots on goal per hour over that time frame. But I still think he's a guy who's extremely talented. This Rangers side of things, man, it just feels tough to get there on a regular basis. I'm going to continue to sprinkle in a little bit of ownership on Artemi Panarin and whoever he's playing with. So I'll probably get a little bit of ownership on this top line for the Rangers here. I think Panarin's just been such a solid player this season. Obviously, somebody's going to be looking to boost his trade value ahead of an impending trade here coming up in the next couple months. So that's about it for me and interest in this game here. A little bit of LA3, little sprinkle on that top line for the Kings, and a little bit of Panarin Trocheck.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning the Rangers offense has certainly perked up as of late, but that was 4 goals against the Senators, who can't stop anything, and they still gave up 8 goals in that hockey game. Then they scored 6 on Harrison, who outside of last night has just been a nightmare. Then only 3 against one of the worst defensive teams in the league last night in the Anaheim Ducks. So against a really good defensive Kings team, I just don't see it this evening. Let's get to your Edmonton Oilers hosting the New Jersey Devils, who are in the second half of a back-to-back. It is worth mentioning that Leon Draisaitl remains out of the lineup. This is what the lines are going to look like. And Zach, obviously, you'll be able to provide some insight here as well. But they only have 3 centers, and one of which is Curtis Lazar. I don't know about you, but I think that means lots of minutes for Connor McDavid tonight, I would guess. Roslovic moves back to the wing to help with that second line. But one other interesting wrinkle. First game without Leon Draisaitl, it was Jake Wallman on the top power play unit in the morning skate today. Vasily Podkolzin moved up to the top power play unit. Now you got full correlation with Hyman, Podkolzin, and McDavid tonight. The matchup is obviously pretty good. They have a 3.6 implied total. The Devils don't defend very well at 5v5, and the penalty kill absolutely stinks. Now, Zach, in terms of the power play, obviously number 1 rank here, how did the power play look to you without Leon the other night?
Good as always. Jake Wallman looked tremendous. He was down there in Leon Draisaitl's office and was just firing pucks from there all night long. So I think this Oilers power play is still just as potent without Draisaitl. I've got interest in Podkolzin here. I think this is a really interesting spot for him. One of our writers at Oilers Nation has done some interviews with Vasily Podkolzin's skills coach from back in Russia.
Nice.
Talking about how his confidence has really grown this year with his willingness to kind of shoot the puck more. This is a guy who, has not put up huge offensive numbers throughout his career here, but boy, this season he's really seemingly starting to put it together for the Edmonton Oilers. He's not going to be a big producer, a point per game guy or anything like that, but he's got 12 goals and 23 points in 50 games played this season. He's already surpassed his goal total from all of last season. He's 1 point short of tying last year's total. So I also thought he looked really good up there on that top line the other night, scored a nice goal off of a beautiful play from Connor McDavid. So I have no issue kind of getting here. I think there's one really interesting thing with the Oilers. You talked about the Oilers going 11-7 here. The Oilers' fourth line is Matt Savoy and Isaac Howard. They've been playing a lot with Jack Roslovic as of late, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Roslovic playing with those guys as well. But they've very quietly been just scratching at the door trying to score some goals here. Over the Oilers' last 10 games played, Savoy has generated 2.09 individual expected goals for, and Isaac Howard 1.35. They've been around it with Roslovic quite a bit. Getting a guy like Connor McDavid down there for some extra ice time. If you're looking for a really kind of out there punt play tonight, I don't mind the idea of like a McDavid Savoy or McDavid Howard mini stack in like a singular lineup or something like that. If you're building 20 or 150, I think it's a really interesting play here tonight. But nonetheless, Edmonton 1 looks super viable here. I don't really need to say a whole lot more on how good they are.
Yeah, they grade out as the number 3 line overall for us tonight. They are 20,300 with Pud Coles in there at just $3,200. Obviously, like that price tag. I just want to see how much Isaac Howard played. Wow, they had no shifts with McDavid the other night. That's crazy. That doesn't even seem possible. I guess they had
That was because
Roslovich down the
was
middle.
playing.
Oh yeah, Kapanen was healthy. That's correct. Yeah, that makes more sense. So it will be a little bit wilder tonight. Yeah, I think like what do we have McDavid projected at? He's got to be like 25 minutes at least.
26.8.
Yeah, and how many did he play the other night?
I don't know. I could pull it up really quickly here, but probably something similar to that.
He played 20
just under 23 minutes.
Just under 23. Yeah, he's going to play a ton tonight. And they had that game in hand the whole time too, right? Askarov starts in Tampa Bay. Adam Gaudette in. Igor Chernyshov comes out of the lineup. So yeah, a lot of interest in this top line for the Oilers, I think goes without saying. In terms of the ownership, it's pretty significant. It's the highest owned line on the slate. So Zach still probably going to get over the field. Are you up? I'm talking to the people. Up to you. I think it's a really good spot. This is a Devils team that really struggles to defend. The matchup is pretty good for the Oilers, who did absolutely no matching whatsoever without Leon Draisaitl. So yeah, I don't mind the idea of getting over the field on Edmonton 1. I don't feel very good about the depth pieces of the Oilers tonight. I think it's top line or bust. Outside of some funky plays like you mentioned. I think that the Oilers are playing pretty well defensively as of late. Would you agree with me? Like, I don't really have that much interest in the Devils, who have been hard to figure out. And Tristan Jarry looked really good against the Canucks the other night, which maybe isn't saying a ton, but where's your interest level in the Devils here?
I don't really have a ton of interest. Like, I don't mind the idea of getting some exposure here. The Devils very randomly seem to be this team that just is able to score against the Oilers. Jesper Bratt, especially 9 goals and 18 points in 13 games played going against the Oilers in his career. I'm pretty sure he's had 1 or 2 hat tricks over that time too. I'm just going to try and pull it up here. I have a memory of him. No, he doesn't have a hat trick. So he must have a couple of 2-goal games at the very least against the Oilers here. But he's seemingly always had success. So I don't mind sprinkling in a little bit of ownership here on this Devil side of things. But you are right. Like, the Oilers are back to playing Edmonton Oilers hockey. It's not necessarily converting overall in terms of the standings or anything like that yet, but the underlying numbers are really solid for them. I mean, over their last 10 games played at 5-on-5, just 2.6 expected goals against per hour of ice time. Their penalty kill has been absolutely tremendous. And man, with Connor Ingram and Tristan Jarry between the pipes, they are both looking like really, really solid players for the Edmonton Oilers here. So I think we're kind of getting back to the point where it gets a little bit scary to stack against the Oilers here with how good that they're playing. That being said, the Devils top line does grade out 7th overall in the charts tonight. You're getting a good floor for sure from guys like Timo Meier and Jack Hughes, whose shot volume has really ramped up as of late. So I've got some interest in the Devils. I'll probably get there a little bit here tonight, but I'm kind of in agreement on the field. Like, maybe 5%, a little bit more if you're feeling a little bit risky, but that's probably as much interest as I have on that New Jersey side.
Yeah, I think part of my concern is that who knows if we see these lines stay together, right? Last game of the night, you're going to be forced to pivot. They were able to win in overtime against the Flames last night, but this line didn't generate much of anything at 5v5, just 0.31 expected goals for in nearly 13 minutes of 5v5 ice time, which that's pretty bad. I said yesterday I had no interest in New Jersey 2. The underlying metrics for them are just disastrous. They had an awful game. I stand by that. So yeah, if these lines stay the same, I do think New Jersey 1's an okay play, similar to you. But for me, I just think there's much better $19,000 options on the slate tonight. And let's get to a few of them now. I obviously, the top 3 lines here, drawing a lot of ownership. I got a lot of interest in all 3 of them. I think they're all fantastic spots tonight. I think Minnesota, obviously, with a little bit lower ownership, is a nice leverage option for us here. But Winnipeg, Dallas, they grade out really well. New Jersey, they grade out really well. I have significantly lower ownership or interest there. So, yeah, I feel like I'm going to be pretty heavy on these top three, and then I do think that we've got some pretty interesting value options throughout. Right, you got LA 3, you've got Columbus 2. We've talked about Buffalo 2 being an okay value option. Nashville 2, I don't mind. I don't mind LA 1 tonight. Like there's some decent value options mixed in. Ottawa 3 looks okay. There's it's easy to find some value here to pair with these really good expensive lines that just look like they are in fantastic spots this evening. So I'm kind of willing to take a stand there. We'll see how that pans out. I really like the low ownership on Minnesota. What are your thoughts here before we move to the defensemen and the goalies?
Yeah, I mean, I think Minnesota is an interesting pivot option here, just in terms of the ownership tonight. Drawing half the ownership, a third of the ownership as Tampa 1 and Edmonton 1 are here. Nashville 1, we talked about liking them. I think they're a solid play here tonight too. This Columbus group definitely got some interest there in that second and that top line for sure. So I think there's some interesting options on this slate here for sure. I think this is a reason why I'm kind of a big fan of this one.
Yeah, in terms of my XG model, top teams, in terms of projected XG for tonight, Edmonton number 1 at 3.7, Tampa number 2 at 3.6, and then it's a bit of a drop off to Ottawa at number 3. So I think that Ottawa power play looks like it's in a good spot. New Jersey grades out pretty well if you want to get frisky there. Buffalo, LA, Dallas, Minnesota coming in next. So I think that perfectly aligns with kind of like how we feel tonight. Some of these spots with Ottawa, with Buffalo, with LA are pretty good value options to pair with these really expensive lines. Let's get to the defensemen and the goalies. I think we did a pretty good job in the defenseman yesterday. I think we always do a pretty good job with the defenseman. Darren Raddysh grades out as the best value defenseman on the slate tonight at $6,200. Easy to see why he's been fantastic. Yossi at just 6K is a massive value. Way too cheap for how well he's played as of late. Maybe not the best matchup ever, but really good price tag for him. Quinn Hughes grades out well, a little bit too pricey probably for me to have a ton of exposure to tonight. I think the top end forwards like McDavid, like Kucherov and stuff grade out a little bit better. So it's probably going to be like a mid to pay down option for me tonight. So we've got no Luke Hughes. He got hurt last night. So Simon Nemec expected to see some more ice time tonight. It'll be Dougie Hamilton that moves up to the top power play unit, though. At least that's what happened in yesterday's game. So he'll get a little bit of a boost there. Our guy Charles Edouard Datu grades out well. Brady Shea, $2,900. He's on the top pair with Roman Yossi as of late. That's obviously a nice boost. We talked about Damon Severson. I think he's one of my favorite value options on the slate. Provorov as well. They're going to see additional minutes, but Severson especially looks great. Logan Stanley's on a power play unit, which is hilarious. Dougie Hamilton just $4,200. I just mentioned him. I talked about Jake Wallman, $3,900. Might not be on that top power play unit, but still a guy that does a lot of shit. Really starting to get back in the lineup here. I think he's going to be a decent play tonight. Anybody I miss that you really like? Oh, JJ Moser's always worth a shout as well.
Yeah, I think he covered it off pretty well here. Like Logan Stanley and Blankenberg, I think are solid options if you're going real dumpster diving here. Mason Lowry at $2,600. I like him. Obviously, Simon Nemec grades out really well here. He's going to have a little bit more opportunity here with Hughes being out of the lineup. Damon Severson, love him as a play tonight, obviously with that bump up to the top unit there. Otherwise, I think he covered it off pretty well here.
Let's take a look. I just want to this is going to be called floor. Who has the best floor on the blue line tonight, at least projected? Zach Werenski, shocker, 9K. Noah Dobson, Brock Faber. Brock Faber's another guy providing a really nice floor right now with some of the injuries that the Wild are dealing with no Jonas Brodin. He's looked pretty good there. Some of the cheaper guys, Brant Clark, Thomas Harley, Darnell Nurse, obviously Dougie Hamilton, Matthias Samuelson, some of the usual suspects. Let's get between the pipes here. Tristan Jarry grades as number 1 goalie to target tonight at $8,200. He's also the highest owned goalie on the slate, which I find pretty interesting. Vasilevsky, great matchup, 74% implied win percentage. Obviously some volume concerns there. Dobish is a goalie that I don't have any interest in at 8K. It's kind of an interesting night in terms of ownership. It's all very balanced. There's some guys that people just absolutely hate. I don't mind the idea of getting to Merzlikins, but you can see how many goals the public is expecting in that game. Merzlikins and Reimer, 2 of the lowest owned goalies. But man, Merzlikins looks like a totally different goalie right now. I don't mind that idea a little bit. Should see a ton of volume tonight. I think he's kind of an interesting play. Who else do we like tonight? I like Hofer quite a bit. I don't mind Wallstead. I don't mind Jeremy Swayman. Yeah, I think Jarry, those 3. maybe some Kemper, maybe some Merzlikins. Those are probably the 6 that I'm going to be focused on tonight. Anybody that I'm not talking about that you like, or anybody that I am talking about that you really like?
Not really, actually. I think you covered it off pretty well here. Like the
Look at
guys that
me
I
go.
highlighted for myself, Jari, Kemper, Merzlikins, Hofer, Swayman. That's where a lot of my interest kind of is tonight. I think Wallstead at $7,400, I can get behind him as a play tonight too. I don't mind that option there for sure. But yeah, I kind of totally agree with you on the goalies tonight.
Merzlikins projected for the most volume tonight. Alex Lyon, another guy that kind of sticks out as a cheaper option. Just see a ton of volume tonight. I don't feel quite as good about Jake Allen. Let's get to tonight's hat trick pick challenge. If you want to participate in tonight's hat trick pick challenge, we're going to do all of our draws tomorrow. A big catch up day for us tomorrow. So any draws that we've missed over the last couple of weeks, the head to head, all that stuff. Going to be kind of a reset for us tomorrow. So make sure you tune in as always. And then if anybody scores a hat trick tonight that nobody picks, we'll have another draw tomorrow. So I think we got 2 at least to raffle off tomorrow. So get your hat trick pick in tonight if you want a chance. All you got to do is drop your hat trick pick in the comment section of the video on YouTube, not the live chat. If your player scores a hat trick, you automatically win a $25 gift card to Nation Gear. You can pick up some DFO swag. And then if we have yesterday, Marcus Foligno scored a hat trick. Nobody picked Marcus Foligno. Shocker. So yeah, if somebody scores a hat trick that nobody picked, we'll just raffle it off to anybody who submitted a pick. I think there was only like 3 or 4 picks today, which is a very low day. So they got a very high chance of winning with Marcus Foligno's hattie. So make sure you get your picks in. And Zach, we'll start with you. Who are you going with tonight?
Let's go with another Zach Hyman.
Oh, very nice. I want to go Vasily Podkolzin, but I think you have to have 3 shots on goal to score 3 goals, and I don't know if he's going to get there. So give me Brandon Hagel tonight for the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's going to do it for this edition of the DFO DFS Hockey Report. I'm Brock Seguin. As always, we got Zach Laing with us, except for Mondays. Shout out to our friends at rotogrinders.com for providing projected ownership for today's show. If you want $20 off your first month of RotoGrinders Premium, all you got to do is click the link in the description of the video on YouTube. We also have a 20% off to Action Network Premium and the link to the DFO DFS Discord, all in the description of the video. That didn't stop you from taking Mark Stone yesterday. That's true, but Harrison sucks. He could have had 3 shots, and Zach has been holding this salute for a very long time. So with that, we will say see you tomorrow, and have a good night. Cheers.